Hey all, today my very special guest is Mike Flint. He is a movie producer amongst other things. However, he's going through some kind of bad times right now. His mother unfortunately passed away. And so now he's dealing with a lot of legal things that he thought my listeners and my watchers would be very interested in learning about. I'm sure there's many of you that have gone through some things where someone close to you has passed away and or you've heard about it and their affairs weren't in order, or sometimes their affairs were in order, like in Mike's case, but he has since gone through many legal battles with the trust that his mother set up. So it's not a typical subject that we normally go over, but I think it's really important, and hopefully we'll learn something from this and what to do, what not to do. But yeah, please stay tuned for my very special guest, Mike Flint.
Welcome to my podcast, where I'll be speaking with guests candidly about interesting topics. So join me on Candid with Kimbra.
I can't believe that you are on my podcast. This is my friend Mike Flint, and I've been talking about it to him in the past, and he was like, I don't know if people will think I'm so interesting, but you are. And now, today we're going to talk about a serious subject, which a lot of people, many people I'm sure have gone through or unfortunately may go through. But first, I just want to talk about you, Mike. I know you produce films, but tell me a little bit about your history. You're from Los Angeles, and you live in a beautiful home, I know. I've seen your home.
At least for now.
Right?
Yeah. No, I'm an LA, Hollywood, Beverly Hills native, born here in LA. I'm actually, just a sidebar, I'm a seventh generation California on my mother's side. And so, whatever the proverbial Hollywood background, I went to Beverly High, I went to UCLA. And
what did you study at UCLA, by the way?
Until I could choose my major, accepted into a major, many things, but I ended up getting a degree in communications. That was my
that was
major.
The safe thing back then. Remember, everyone was like communications.
well, back then at UCLA, it was one of the hardest, if not hardest, majors to get into. You had to have like a super high GPA. It was limited amount. It wasn't like it, and it was at the time, it maybe still is, was an interdisciplinary. You had to take psychology, English, sociology, and then journalism. It wasn't the traditional, what you think, oh, it's just communication. There was interpersonal communication, mass communication.
Sure.
Well, I can't even, you asked a good question. I haven't thought about that in 40 years. That is a great question.
When you graduated 4 years ago.
Yes. I shouldn't have said that. Yes, you put a 0 on it, but that is approximately.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, we won't say when you graduated. But and then how did you get into producing films?
Well, there's no one way, and I don't think anybody who gets in this business finds they can say, they can point to one or two things. I would say it was in my blood, and it was in my people around me, and I guess from a young age, I always wanted to be in it. Two jobs in front of me, or maybe three: a lawyer, a veterinarian, or being in the film business. That was what in front of me when I was a young kid.
Wow.
Throw on just for the fun, because my dad was both a lawyer and a fighter pilot. I wanted to be in the Navy, and I was in the Navy. I was in the Navy for probably close to a dozen years. I was a public affairs officer in the United States Navy.
I see. Okay. Well, thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you.
I used to sing for the USO. I mean, I'm sure I've told you that before, but this was
how lucky they were to have you.
Thank you. No, I know, but it was so much fun. It was probably one of the best times in my life, and we went to Africa, the Middle East, Europe, everywhere. So anyway, but I know we're running a little late today, and I want to get to the subject that you want to talk about. So for people that don't know, Mike's mother passed away. Gosh, how many years has it been now? 6 years,
close to the date.
Oh wow, 6 years. Yeah.
March 20th of 2019.
Okay, and she was pretty sick, right?
In her last year of life, she was diagnosed with cancer, and they gave her approximately a month to live. And of all things, my mom was a professional probate conservator who actually was one of the founding mothers of professional fiduciaries in California.
Mm.
And she had a simple will, basically, that my dad had, but she finally got down to saying, "Hey, I should do a trust
Mhm.
and create a trust for her sons and to try to preserve her wishes and what she wanted." And that's where we begin on this whole story. And while she was sick, she was given a concoction of drugs to extend her life. One of them being Keytruda. Keytruda's on TV all the time, and Keytruda has numerous side effects. So that's part of the problem and how someone can come in to take advantage of someone who's on medication who no longer has all her full faculties. And that's where the story begins.
Right, right. Because yeah, I've always heard that both of my parents set up a trust, so I always heard that was, once you got the trust, you're safe. But I know your story kind of goes in an interesting, terrible way because the trust was, broken, right? I mean, they were able to change the trust at some point, right? Which I didn't know you could do. But okay, so your mom was a financial planner, and so she was concerned about both you boys, and so she set up the trust a certain way, right? You and your brother. And then she was doing business with this woman, this lawyer. We'll call her a lawyer, right? A lawyer. What's her name again? The lawyer,
Sandra DeMeo.
Sandra DeMay. Okay. And you were telling me when we were talking about it that she set up a PO box in Orange County, but she really didn't practice in Orange County that you know of, right?
I don't know her background. I know that she had a PO box, and at some point in time, she probably practiced in Orange County. I can't attest one way or another, but she, as far as I know, she has a PO box, and that's important. Why Kimbra's asking me, because she has a PO box, and or she practices law down in Orange County.
Hmm.
She could bring the all the actions that occur down in the Orange County probate courthouse. On the other side of the coin is the beneficiaries, uh, uh,
You and
Guy
your
and
brother.
Mike Flint, and even the contingent beneficiaries, and all the property and everything my mom has and lived is in Los Angeles and in Los Angeles County.
Right. And so you
The
guys had to
fact
keep
that
going down there for.
there's nothing. I mean, I'd say that outside of visiting Disneyland ever so often and maybe attending a few sporting events in Orange County, our our uh, our interaction with Orange County is minimal to none. Our entire lives is now dependent on the Orange County courthouse, and it seems very apparent, and or via a statement that Sandra says that's her home field. She knows everybody down there. That's where she wants it, even though it's more or less adverse to the estate and the cost of the estate to have it take place down Orange County. And the system down in Orange County, for right or wrong, is different than in Los Angeles or maybe in other places. They have a system where it would seem fair. They have no one judge handles the entire case.
Oh,
It pops to judge. Whether that's right or wrong, it's not for me to say. I could see the argument why it makes it safe. It makes no judge have complete power over the trust. On
that's
the
true.
other side of the coin is no one judge hears the entire issues that go on. So
Right.
we've been over the duration of 6 years, we've been in front of no less than a dozen different judges.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah. Um, and there's the way it is, there's certain aspects of the case that get ruled by this. In sum and substance, it really is a very simple trust. It's but and it's simple. How can and it's simple if you don't mind me saying is my mom creates a trust and a will that has issues in its first draft because of the person who drafted, Sandra DeMeo. Whether it was due because of her negligence or my mom was on Keytruda, those are allegations that have yet to prove. You can take a good guess which one it is.
Hmm.
And then there's a amendment to that trust that is done by Sandra DeMeo. Then there's another amendment to that trust because my mom gets a reverse mortgage, which Sandra DiMeo does not participate in that amendment.
Hmm.
And then there's a final draft amendment where my mom, believe it or not, is off Keytruda, which basically is her death sentence, because when Keytruda is basically saved her and gave her another year in life.
Okay.
When they took her off, it was basically because it wasn't doing it. It's a very expensive drug, almost like $10,000 a month to get that drug, unless you're on a clinical trial or something like that.
And
And that
insurance doesn't cover that drug.
insurance, no. In some cases, it may. I can't give a blanket statement, but quite often it's not covered by insurance, and
Got it.
sometimes it is. So going forward, these amendments were done. Two originals done by Sandra, amendments done by the loan company, and then my mother, before she passed, she had her faculties back, and she made a final will and mentioning all the things. And basically, the division is me and my brother get 50-50. That's the basic general idea. There's some few extra things. And then what happens when me and my brother pass and if we don't have issue? That's basically the simple thing. It's pretty simple. Sandra agrees with all of them at one point. We meet with her, and then she decides, when she looks at my mother's final draft, it doesn't compensate her to the amount of money that she wanted.
Right.
She loses control over it, because if she doesn't get the amount of money that she was expecting to get, or abscond with the estate, either whatever it is, or follow the terms of whatever she doesn't get financially the amount of money that she was expecting.
Right.
So she basically wants us, me and my brother, to get an attorney to represent us against her, basically to contest. So the will is the will is the will. And so you should know there's a trust and there's a will, and they, generally speaking, can't be broken.
Right.
That is the law. There's a trust done, and there's a great argument. You can't break up the trust. In extreme circumstances, when the beneficiaries don't get along and there's a chance of contesting the will, a settlement is done.
Okay.
Sandra DiMeo recognized, I believe, the mistakes within the thing and how much money she should be able to get. She did not want to go along with it. Then we offered her a substantial amount of money to walk away from the entire thing. And we wanted to, me and my brother, are on the same page with all the terms my mother it is. So we have no problem with it. Sandra's the one that has the problem with it. And for her host of reasons, I'm not going to bring them up, but she has her reasons why she didn't. But we made a settlement with her, or tried to make a settlement. She didn't accept the 6-figure sum to go her own way, and me and my brother were on the same page. She chose not to. So she proffered eventually, after an attorney that I had, a settlement to break up the estate, whereby my brother got half and I got half, but she would be in charge of my brother's half, and I would get to keep my own half in my own trust. And it seemed like a good idea. It seems like a very good idea, because we wouldn't have to litigate against her. So we could save a lot of money. And she let us know litigating the estate will continue to lose. Sure. A settlement is what? And most people realize settlement is far better.
Sure.
Than going to court. So we made a settlement. Unfortunately, and a long story short, the terms of the settlement were not met. Sandra did not perform the terms of the settlement. And there was a host of them, and there's some side issues. So we tried to basically, the settlement basically say it made it void, because the terms of the settlement, which is really pretty much simple. Since nobody followed the terms of settlement, you make an application to the court saying nobody's following the terms of the settlement. Let's go back to the original trust. Well, it took, without going the reason and bore the audience, It took years for the court to hear this out, whether the settlement was made, but it was never enacted. So in order for the settlement to be, you have to enact the settlement. I never got my half of the estate, and Guy never got his. It was never enacted. But the litigation goes on. Eventually, another settlement was made with Sandra, whereby she would leave the estate and acknowledge Sherry O'Laverty, as who was mentioned in the will, to be the successor trustee.
Mm-hmm.
It took the courts another year and a half, for all sorts of reasons, for all sorts of motions, to acknowledge what my mom had written in her will, that Miss O'Laverty would be trustee, someone that my brother wanted, someone that I wanted, someone that my mother wanted, and that finally Sandra DeMeo acknowledged the best person for this estate was Sherry O'Laverty. That was accomplished in approximately, I think, 2023. It was going on, and I believe in February of 2024, Sandra resigned and the court appointed Sherry O'Laverty. That was last year. You would think everything was fine and over with at that period of time. Turns out Sandra DeMeo wrote checks out to herself after she was no longer the trustee to pay for her services.
Interesting.
And she has an argument that we made a settlement with her to pay for her service. The problem is she didn't follow the terms of that settlement either. It took a lot longer. There were costs that were associated that took a year and a half longer. So when we made that settlement, it was like in 2021, it took a year and a half, and it cost the estate a bundle of money to get to that settlement. And then she wrote checks to herself. So who has to pay for the problems? Wasn't the Flint estate that had the problems. It was either the court or Sandra DeMeo did not follow the terms. The court is an innocent party in this. Sandra DeMeo did not follow the terms. She did not act as the fiduciary and the trustee during the time that the courts were listening to this trial. So we did not feel that she deserved any money. And we surely didn't think she should write checks to herself. And it's against the law to write a check to yourself when you no longer have authority to have the check. Thus begins a new round of issues with Sandra DeMeo. So we had a settlement, and now we have a whole new round of issues. So then we had to get another expert attorney to unravel what Sandra DeMeo did. And this attorney observed something that nobody has observed, not the courts, not our lawyers, not Sandra's lawyers, not Sandra, that the contingent beneficiaries were never notified. According to law, all beneficiaries have to be notified. It's in probate code, it's law. That gets in the state attorney general saying, how come, Sandra, you didn't notify? All of a sudden, a new Pandora's box is open, and now there has to be a hearing and a trial why Sandra did not notify the contingent beneficiaries. Meanwhile, it costs a fortune, and there was no money. It was in a standstill. There's no money to operate the estate. Sandra has walked off with a substantial amount of money. There's no liquid cash, only the real estate. So unless we resolve with Sandra, and all this time we try to resolve with Sandra, she doesn't want to resolve. So this new case goes on, and this new attorney says, you forgot to notify. And her answer is, more or less, okay, so I made a mistake.
It's a pretty big mistake. Right?
It's a gigantic mistake, because as this goes on, and that's not even the biggest mistakes to come in. There's more mistakes that happen. So here we are 6 years trying to explain this in a cogent, coherent manner, and people have logical questions. You meant to say you made a settlement and a settlement and a settlement, and you still can't settle because there are other issues. There is a judgment that's involved, that they want to break up the estate so they can collect on a judgment. So it's advantageous to them to break up the estate, but the estate should never be broken up. It should have never been broken up, but we tried to settle. And this other person wants to try to force a settlement on. Even the courts have ruled. Now, that it's not being broken. The courts have ruled that it's now in the same as say. And now there's a trial against Sandra DeMeo, and it won't be heard till next year. But the estate can't withstand a prolonged, protracted entanglement in court, but we're kind of forced into it. And then there was a mandatory settlement conference last week or the week before, and that was vacated because proper paperwork wasn't filed.
Mike, I want to ask you a question. Did you do any investigation on her since, all this happened? And has she done anything unethical or illegal to other people that you know about?
Excellent question. Yes, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen judgments against her, but there are many allegations from other people that she's hurt other people. There's an allegation from, I won't say her last name, but a woman named Alicia, that she feels the way Sandra DeMeo handled her parents' estate ultimately led to their death.
Oh my gosh.
So she feels so the allegations are there. I'm not there to prove it, but there are allegations that she's done this. There have been, from my investigation, there was a trial against Sandra DeMeo's mother for something in LA Superior Court for some type of malfeasance or practicing law without a license. I can't remember the specifics. So, and by the way, her mother, Sandra DeMeo's mother, is part of our allegations were the reasons why my mother was persuaded and or used Sandra DeMeo is because of her mother. My mother and Sandra's mother supposedly went way and they were friends. They were hardly friends for seeing what has happened to my mother's estate. At the end of the day, my mother's will and trust has, unless there's a settlement with Sandra where she makes good on everything, the state has been irreparably damaged, and there's no way to bring it back outside of a judgment against Sandra DeMeo. That estate has been decimated.
Wow.
And hypothetically, even if we win against DeMeo, she possibly could. I'm just thinking 3 steps ahead. She may not have enough money to cover the expense. She may not have enough insurance. So let's say you win a multi-million-dollar judgment against her. She declares bankruptcy, and then how do you collect against her? I mean, maybe there's ways, maybe she has property, maybe she doesn't. I don't know any of the details on what she owns, what she has, and the damages. And of course, she's going to put up a defense like anybody to say, hey, there's a reason why she mishandled things. That she hasn't, she was oblivious to the fact that she had to, well, whether it's an extrinsic fraud or a deliberate fraud, it's a fraud just the same.
So I guess you can't, because I know she's a lawyer, right? She is a practicing lawyer. So I guess you can't get her like disbarred or anything until something has to be really proven, like she loses this case or something.
That is kind of true. We have reported her to the state bar. Mm-hmm. State bar, for whatever reason, her response is that she wrote checks after the LA Police Department has called it a fraud. They determined they've now even called it a theft. Mm-hmm. And they're investigating because the police it's to them it's prima facie is, hey, she wrote the check when she was no longer the trustee. So it's either fraud or she took out the funds. She no longer had the authority. Sherry never gave her the authority. She was no longer the trustee. She wrote the checks out to herself after she has to collect in any normal way possible.
I was just going to ask.
And she did not do that. So there is our allegation of fraud, and the police department did it now. So they're investigating. So how is Sandra DeMeo going to defend that? I don't know. But I personally, because of the length of time and my brother's mental and physical health, mm-hmm. It has always been much wiser to settle. I'm willing to settle. The only ones that I would like to, even though the damage that she's caused our estate, I do believe the lawyers that have gone after and tried to protect. They need to be paid, but should be paid by Sandra DeMeo because
Right.
DeMeo caused the problems, not the estate. The
Sure.
state has done everything that they can within their power to settle. My brother and I are not the lawyers. I've been acting improper to save the estate money, and personally, I don't have the money. So we've been fighting this now a cumulative 6 years. You could imagine how much money gets paid to the lawyers or will get paid. The answer is, how do we settle that? And I've always been saying to Sandra Free, hey, if you take care of the legal fees, we'll settle.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We'll settle. You take it. You guys, even going into the last fraud, the attorney, whoever said, hey, contacted, as far as I know, because I wasn't in on the call, contacted DeMeo and her attorney saying, listen, you've committed a fraud by not reporting to the contingent beneficiary. The judge has said so. Why don't we settle? Just inform your insurance company and we could settle. And instead of settling, she decides to go forward. So thus the state attorney general gets involved, the attorneys for Cedars-Sinai, the attorneys for the state of Israel, the attorneys for UCLA, the attorneys for UC Berkeley, who are contingent beneficiaries, all stepped into the fray of a simple case with Mike Flint, Guy Flint, and Sandra DeMeo and my Joyce. So can you imagine? It's really blown up big. And although we're not celebrities like Britney Spears or Wendy Williams, the effect on what's happening is rampant. I just happen to be willing to fight. You happen to be, as a good investigative reporter, found this to be interesting and saying, hey, it could happen to you, Kimbra. Can you imagine you writing a trust that you assume is going to give the money to who you want? And if there's a way to break it, none of your wishes are going to be followed.
So,
Every American is up this, because what good is a will and trust if it's not being followed?
right. No, exactly. I wanted to ask you two things. First of all, why do you think your mother trusted this woman? Because she sounds so, despicable, unethical.
Well,
Because she
a
was.
confidence artist,
Mm,
which we all know it's not for convicted, it's a confidence artist. Confident artists, sometimes can be legal and they instill managers, agents, lawyers. They instill confidence in you. So it's usually a bad kind of day because they con you out of something. But a confidence artist comes aboard, and my mother believed that Sandra DeMeo was going to deliver and create a trust at a certain price and do it for my mom at a price that's, because lawyers charge a lot of money.
sure.
My mom was an expert in this area, and she knew that properly handle this trust, what a lawyer probably should be paid. I'm just taking a guesstimate, $10, $20, $30, $40,000 to handle the estate. My mom was allegedly, but from my mom's story and my brother's story, is Sandra DeMeo was going to do it for the will, the trust, be executor and trustee for $1,500.
Mm,
My mom, and that my mom was going to give her business, which she had a conservative business that
sure.
could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
So Sandra was going to be compensated with very minimum $1,500 or her business. And my mother handed over. My mother had probably 30, 40 other lawyers that she should have gone to. There were other lawyers who wanted to. But when my mom was in the hospital, Sandra DeMeo approached her with her mother and basically
Kind of conned your mom.
facilitated
Yeah.
and conned my mother into things that she couldn't even read at the time that she signed that will. At the moment of signature, she didn't. And a witness to the will, believe it or not, was our former housekeeper and Sandra DeMeo's mother.
Wow.
Whether that's legal or not, it's borderline. So you have a person that cannot even really read English, and you have the other person in the will that is Sandra DeMeo's mother. And quite frankly, the way the first draft is written, Sandra DeMeo stands to gain an incredible amount of power. She has an incredible amount of judgment. She basically has the right to sell all the properties and basically falsely accuse me and my brother of X, Y, and Z that we can't take care of ourselves. So she's in control of the entire estate. When my mother gets her faculties and can read this, she jumps like, how could you do this?
Right. I remember you telling me
And
that.
and then there becomes an amended one. But instead of restating the whole trust, which is what she should have done, she makes amendments. And those amendments, they're the wrongful things that were stated are still there, but the amendments come in. So you have to read the whole 120-page document, or however many pages it is, to understand the whole thing, which it should have been restated and made simple.
Yeah. And you were saying to me beforehand that this happens more to women, you said, right?
Well, I'm saying that in respect of what gets coverage. There was a movie I care a lot, and it happened
Oh,
to a woman that they focused in on. Look what happens to Wendy Williams, or look at Britney Spears. They have estates and they have conservators that are involved. And it seems, this is just a guesstimate. I don't have the exact figures on. Women live longer than men.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Okay. So the man dies, who ends up having control of this is the wife, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Thus, by natural, it's a presumption. Again, I'm not an expert. I didn't look at the statistics to see
Sure.
this,
You just
but
feel that you feel
I'm
that.
just using logic more than it is saying, hey, if women live longer by nature, they're the ones when they die, they have the final trust.
Sure.
I just, in fact, my brother's lawyer, unfortunately, she just passed away the other day. Well, her husband passed many years before. It's now in her hands, and she has her trust, and she has her will. So the women, whether it's against women or not, the answer is women live longer. So they're the ones, if it goes to court and if it goes to trial, or, I would believe it's quite often that there is a woman that gets attacked in this thing.
Sure. I mean, that makes
But it
sense.
can happen to either one. I mean, the key for the con artist, the confidence artist,
Hmm.
is to find an estate where you could take advantage of it, whether you're doing exactly like whether and it has happened when the kids, the beneficiaries, they often have a disagreement of the percentages of what they're going to get. So usually the trust, again, I use the word usually, revolves around the parties and beneficiaries. They disagree on exactly what the terms of the settlement. So there's a fight, and then there's a attorney that represents the trust, and they have to work this out. They either follow the exact guidelines as the trust was written, or then there's litigation going on because they say, hey, when the time that mom or dad signed my will, they didn't have all their capacity, they were on
Right.
drugs, or it got changed at the last minute due to undue influence. That is what we believe is my mother did want to do a trust. My mother meant well, but if you get a person involved that is not able to transmit on paper exactly what my mom wanted and intended, there becomes an issue.
A quick question was, did Sandra DeMeo meet your mom only in the hospital, or did she kind of scope her out, or did she know her before that?
Well, if there goes to trial, that's an excellent question. I don't know how. I was aware of my mom's business, and I was aware by name of dozens of the lawyers she worked with. I had never heard of the name Sandra DeMeo ever cross.
Because it was just interesting to me, like if she just kind of was like scoping the hospitals, you know?
No, that could be done. I don't believe that she's going. What she did is somehow, some way, when my mom was wanting to finally do her will and trust. Now, the fact that my
I,
father had passed away,
right.
and now that she was diagnosed with cancer, the end could be near. So she buckled down to get it. And so she probably contacted several of the attorneys that she worked with, that she had, and she proffered what she wanted. And she, from what I recall through my brother, so it's hearsay, but through my brother, very rarely direct with me, is that she was trying to get an attorney that would do it for very, very little.
Oh, your mom. Your mom
My
was.
mom.
Yeah.
And somehow Sandra DeMayo's mother, I believe's name is Barbara Bruner, some way she got in touch with Joyce saying, hey, my daughter can handle this for you, and she'll do it for the price you want.
So in that case, it was like you get what you pay for kind of thing, you know?
You get what you pay for. You want to believe in the goodness of people.
Sure.
To defend my mother on this thing is, hey, she knew Barbara Bruner for years. She knew of Sandra DeMayo years through Barbara Bruner.
True.
She wanted to believe, and Sandra comes in saying lovingly, Joyce, I will do everything you want. I will take care of you. I understand your needs and your problems, and I will draft something for you that you want. So whether my mom, when she was on Keytruda, stated it correctly to her or not, I'm sure Sandra will allege that she wrote what my mom wanted.
Right.
But anybody who would use common sense, why would you want to sell all the properties when you have enough properties to support Michael and Guy to more money than is in the trust? And I'm just using a rough number. The trust that Sandra DeMayo drafted first was going to give Guy and I each $2,500 a month for the rest of our lives until all the properties run out. So there would be a limit to it. And that Sandra DeMayo, would get a piece of that pie.
Right.
Well, why would you need to get me and Guy get 25 when the estate, if at the time of my mom's passing, roughly speaking, or right before, she had most of the properties were unencumbered. There was no mortgage, no nothing. You're in real estate, there's income property. You have income property, roughly speaking, of $10,000 a month, and that's not even breaking up with ADUs or doing the things that we can possibly do, that's going to come into the estate. So why would my mother leave me and my brother $2,500 each, $5,000, when the estate could bring in $10,000 a month? There would be no logical reason. Of course, when my mom got her faculties together, and you can see that again, she was livid that Sandra DeMayo did not properly reflect or look at the situation or advise her or give her advice. So even if we go with what Sandra may allege, why would you do that? It would make no sense, right? It would make no sense to you. Why would anybody do that? And then the contingent beneficiaries, whether it's I have a son or daughter or not that I'm aware of, but let's say if I did, I could leave a bundle of money to someone that may be my son or daughter that's out there.
Sure.
And it's not out of the realm that anybody who's seen the Mamma Mia movie or something, it happens. Hey, It's happened to Paul McCartney. I saw it happen not long ago to Bob Wall, and he passed away, and then he had a kid that he didn't find out till the day he died. So
Mike, I'm so sorry. I have to interrupt you. We have to cut
no problem.
Listen, we're going to have a part 2. I was just thinking about this when we were talking, because you're going to have to go continue this case,
Yes.
So maybe we could make it like an ongoing thing, like I'm going to follow you.
It would be. And I hope that your podcast gets recognized, because this is a fascinating subject. And by the way, you could do this job, whether extra or as somebody, it should be covered in the media, because this is not about me. It is happening to me, but it happens to many others. So you can have other guests, other women that this has happened to, how they're dealing with this court.
Maybe next time too, we'll get your attorney or someone on there as well.
Sure.
I'll give you guys a little more notice.
Well, thanks for letting me talk. I really prefer to hear you talk and ask questions, but I know you open it up where I try to. So I hope I explained it as best as so your audience could. But hopefully there's stories online on my case and on
watch
other
that movie.
Cases.
The movie you said, I Care a Lot.
I Care a Lot.
Right.
That is a really good thing, because it's based on a true story. It's Hollywood fictionalized, but that is what can happen to you, and what's happening to Wendy Williams is it's happening, and it's happening left and right across the country, because at the end of the day, why do people rob banks, or why do people go into a convenience store, or because that's where the money is. In this case, it's more like a civil crime. You got in to find out somebody. You alluded to this. Walk the halls of a hospital. Walk the halls of a retirement home.
Don't give anybody ideas. All right. Well,
but that's I Care a Lot.
I
See, I
know.
care a lot because that comes right out of the movie.
I know. Thank you so much, Mike. And we'll have you back on again soon to follow up, okay?
Thank you, Kimbra. All the best to you.
You too. Thanks so much for coming on. And this is an important subject, and I will be following up on it and putting some notes under the actual video.
Look forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye.